we were talking about interactive components, and what interactive components are kind of like self-contained interactions that you can make in Figma. So the most basic prototype that you can create is just between two frames. So when I press the F key and I draw out a frame, let me make my window just a little bit bigger. Here we go. So when I draw out a frame, that is the most basic unit that you need for a prototype. So anything that you create, it must be within a frame to make a simple prototype. So we're going to create an interaction between these two frames. I'm going to press the O key, draw it a circle, put it in the sensor, copy that, paste that over here. And all I'm going to do is with this simple interaction, I'm going to make this larger. Right? So just kind of demonstrating the most basic prototype that you can make. So we have frame 1, we have frame 2, let's say 001. Over here, I'm going to double click on that 002. And when I create a prototype, I'm going to select the object that I want to make the interaction, right? So we're just making a basic interaction here. You'll notice that when I'm in prototype mode, by the way, to swap between those modes, you press Shift E, swaps between those. Boom, 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 boom. Hi, y'all. Thank you, Figma Ryam, and thanks for joining. Happy Figstream Friday to you as well. So here we go. Gonna just make this simple prototype. Got to be over in prototype mode. Let's drag this interaction. And now what I'm doing is I'm creating an interaction between these two frames. So when I on click, this is the event handler, whatever event you want to happen. So if this was while hovering, while pressing, or I could even connect a PS5 controller via Bluetooth, and I can use those triggers to actuate this. But for now, I'm just gonna make an on click. We're gonna navigate to that second frame. And here, let's just use Smart Animate. I'm going to explain some of the concept behind Smart Animate, when to use it, when not to use it. Essentially, when I have here the same layer order and stacking of my objects between those two frames, it's then going to perform this. If you've ever been to any one of my workshops, you know that I like controlling my easing curves. So here I'm going to make a nice ease in, out. And what that is it accelerates, it hits a top speed, and then it deaccelerates. So much of the motion that you see in real life kind of follows that, right? Things have to gain momentum. They kind of hit a top speed and then they kind of slow down. So here I just made a very basic interaction. So Smart Animate, custom curve, 300 milliseconds. I'm going to select this object and have that return. So you can see it's navigating back to that first frame, Smart Animate, and it's custom. So here, let's just give this a name, and I'm just calling this default. This is just our introductory to kind of set a baseline for the stuff that we're going to be doing today. So when I hit that play button, I'm going to get this little preview window, and this is like the preview prototype mode. You can see how that kind of plays there. It's kind of nice. It's got a nice little juicy kind of feel to that interaction. If I want to see it in full on prototype mode, I can come over here to the top right. I can hit that play button. It's going to open it up into another window and I can see that there. But Figma recently came out with this preview modal that gives you the ability to see it live as you're making updates and changes. So if I was to make any edits to this design, let's say if I was to make that blue, I can go back into prototype mode and I can hit play and I can see that just kind of live update right there. So this is the most basic type of interaction. Now, the problem with this is that this is entirely frame based. And because it's frame based, it's like I have to do one thing to the next. So an interactive component is like an interaction, but it's encapsulated. So that way you can put it into another frame. So let's say if I was to take this interaction right here, I'm going to click, drag, and hold over both of these frames. So both of these frames are now selected. I'm going to hop up over here. This is the component menu. And once again, a component is an object that you want to reuse. When you're making design systems, you make reusable components so that way other designers are keeping the consistency, right? So you're making an element that is going to be reused. So here, what I'm going to do is create a component set. So component set. Yo, what's up, Baffled Always? It's Figgin time. I love all of the puns. This is great. It's Figgin time, Figstream Friday, and gotta get that hotline bling. All right, create component set. We now have this created, and this is encapsulated, right? So this is now a component. And so if I put a larger frame here and I copy an instance of that and paste this into the frame, I'm going to hold down the option key. Let's drag Command D, right? Let's select these, right? I'm going to hold down the Option and the Shift key. When I hold down the Option and the Shift key, it kind of keeps it all together, right? So I can just snap it, Command D, D, right? And I could select them all. Now, if I were to align these, right? If I go to the Align tool, right, that's not going to work. So I'm going to show y'all a little trick. If you hold down the Option key, you can align items as a group within a container. So right now, all of these objects, if I want them to be aligned perfectly within this container, I can hold down the Option key. If you're on Windows, as the Alt key, and let's align the horizontal sensors and let's align the vertical sensors. And now it's kind of all set there. Like I said, if I was just to hit sensor, that's not what I want. Let's hit undo. I'm going to Option hold. There we go. So what I've effectively done is I created an interaction, right? So I click on this and it goes from here to here. And now when I hit this play button, when I preview this window, you can see that I can click all of these, right? And this is the kind of like core concept. This is just like our warm up for what an interactive component can be. So typically, before interactive components, all of your interactions had to go frame by frame. But when you have kind of interactions that are sort of nested within your frame, it provides for a lot more opportunity, right? Like you can now have these sort of nested interactions and have more variations, whereas previously you would need a frame to represent every single one of those states. And with those interactive components, it allows you to have those many states play out just like that. So that being said, does anybody have any questions before we continue? Otherwise, I could just continue on with some additional examples and kind of go into some deep dives here as well. So nothing. All right, cool. So just kind of talking a little bit more about components, and like one of the examples that like I love to show is kind of like a shutter example, right? So here, when I click, I'm going to create a polygon. I'm going to draw out a polygon. And this is a triangle. So let me just give it a bit more contrast so y'all could see, what this triangle is. Now, I know that some of you actually saw this on the Friends of Figma Discord the other day. They were like, what's all of this extra space that we have here? And what that is this is allowing this triangle to be centered properly. It's applying it to its physics sensor. Also, any shape that you generate, this extra space is accounting for that center. So if you need to remove that for whatever reason, let's say you want the triangle to be tied to its bounds, you hit Command E, and that'll flatten the triangle directly to its bounds. Where this extra area accounts for, where it's most useful is, let's say if you're making a play button, you draw a circle and you need this to be centered perfectly into that circle. Let's hit that to the front. Let's make that, a little bit more pronounced. So with this bounding box around the honoring the physics weight, or the like mathematical, it's called the centroid of the object. It's a legitimate term, centroid. The centroid of the object, that's what's going to allow it to be centered there. So otherwise, if I was to have, let's say this triangle, I were to center these. I just love giving this lesson because there's always seems to be somebody that benefits from it. So you'll notice that when I center it here, those lines, that it doesn't look so good. It's like slightly off to the left. So this is a bad play button. You don't want to do it. This is not what you want to see here. This is terrible. Oops, I got to put that line above it all. There we go. That's the bad example. This is what you want. So whenever you're creating a play button for your various movies and things like that, you want to make sure that it's centering to the centroid of that shape. And all of the shapes are going to have that. So if I were to create any sort of polygon, if I was to create like an octagon or something, you can see that it's kind of honoring it with that sort of physics-based center. So thinking about things that can be made with interactive components. I like to tell little stories with these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you like another fun example that can be used in presentations. I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to draw out a single frame here. And this is from a TikTok that I made last year around this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a animation of multiple frames. So let's just, call this one for now. I'm great at naming layers. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, drag that and then I'm going to press Command D, Control D if you're in Windows. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm going to make a 5-frame animation. Let's say, here we go. Let's make that a little bit thicker. Let's make that, black, right? So I have here, let's make that not so thick. Voila. So here we go. Boom, 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 right? Do, 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 and la, la, la. So if I want to make a 5-frame animation, do, do, do. Awesome. He loves how my promotion works. Awesome. I'm glad that you dig it. So here we go. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And let's say I want to like make like a little squiggle animation that's reusable. And I'll show you like even like a better example than this. So what I can do here is I can draw out a prototype. So I'm going to draw one line to the next. Here I'm going to use after delay. After delay allows for no user input. Essentially what's going to take place here with an after delay, it's waiting for a period of time before it progresses to the next state. If you're a developer, you're probably familiar with like set timeout, something like that. So basically after a period of time, let's wait about 50 milliseconds and we're going to navigate to that second frame. Here we're just going to have it be instant. We just want it to move on to the next frame. We're going to make like a single animation that's just going to kind of move from point A to point B. Now, let's say I want to duplicate this interaction to all of my other frames. Here in the prototype panel, I can select that frame and I can come over here to the left and I can select that interaction. So I can copy the interaction right here. So some of you probably aren't aware of this, but I can just copy that interaction. I can go to each one of these frames and I can paste it. Now they all have the interaction, but they're all going to the second frame. And all I really need to do here is just move that arrow. So I can actually find that interaction and say, oh, like I want this one to go back to that beginning. I can move this down so you can see there, right? I want this one to actually go, here. When I select that third frame, I want this one to go there. And that second frame, I want this one to go there. So it keeps all the properties of the interaction, they're all like the same. But I could just copy paste that interaction from that layer onto the other ones. So if I just hit play, you see it's like it's animating, right? And then we're going to make this an interactive component. Don't you worry. I know that's the title of this, but what I want y'all to see here as well is I can select like all of these interactions as well. So we have the delay and you see that they're all selected here. So I can change the timing all at the same time. I can make this delay, let's say 20 milliseconds. Now when I hit play, it's going to go a lot faster. So I can select them all. I can come over here and you'll see when I click on the delay, we can increase that time. So I could say maybe 100 milliseconds and change that duration of that animation. Now, in order to encapsulate this, right? Like I've made the frames and you're like, well, I want to have several of these on a single page. I can actually just kind of select them all. I can come up here and I can create that component set. So I can make my interaction first, I can test it out, and then I can make it into an interactive component. This is component set. Many people just call these variants, but it's a component set and each frame is a different variant. Each frame represents that different state, that different visual state of that object. So I'll call this doodle. And this is handy if you are, let's say, you just need something to kind of like showcase a bit of a flourish, like you're making a product design or a presentation and you need like a little flourish or something that might be representative of your brand. So let's press F. I'm going to draw a frame here. I can copy, one of those frames there. I can duplicate out a bunch of them. And in my design panel, because each one of these is an instance of this component set, I can change, that starting point for each one. So there we go, 2, there we go, 3, there we go, 4, there we go, 5. So now when I play this frame, all of those animations are kind of playing, at their own pace from their own starting point. What's cool about that is, like I can kind of move this around. Let's say I lose all of their backgrounds there. Oops. Let me hit undo here. I'm going to lose all of their backgrounds. There we go. Let's lose those fills and hit play. There we go. And so if I move it around, you can kind of see how that shows up. Oh, I didn't remove that one's background. There we go. Oh, why won't its background go away? Go away, background. Fill. There, it's gone. Okay, cool. So let me just hit refresh on that. There you go. You can see them kind of like overlap, and I can press the K key and I can scale that. Oh, let me hit refresh. There you go. Yeah. So you can get some really cool effects. And once again, like I said, the way to think about an interactive component is this sort of like mini encapsulated story. All right. So cool. Any questions at this point? I know I covered a couple of things. I'm really indexing on prototyping and trying to like kind of create like a nice little workflow. So I know one of the most common ones would be to create something like a little switch. So like let's say here, I draw a circle. And let's make it all out of rectangles, because I know that nested radii is like all the rage these days. So what I'm going to do here is let's make it like 600 by 200. No, that's a little bit too much. Let's make this 600 by 300. Yeah. And I'm going to round out those corners. Yeah, let's just round that all the way up. Let's just throw like a crazy radii on that object. So here we go. We got the radii at like 480. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in another little circle, or once again, I can make a rectangle. And then also apply its radii. Let's make sure that this is like 250 by like 250. There we go. Right. So I have this like little switch that I'm going to turn on and off. And so I'm going to use a drag interaction as part of that. So this is just the beginning of it. And once again, we should probably name these things. Let's head on over to my layers, and I'm going to call this, toggle, and let's say toggle BG. So there we go. So there's my toggle. It's not perfect, but it's close enough for demonstrative purposes. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create this one a little bit different. I'm going to first create this as a component. And I can call this, toggle, let's just say like off. And here, gonna follow along so I can refuse to name mine. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, you could join in the link here. I believe it's already pinned. The pinned link should be there. So you could join me in this file. Let's see what, Julie's up to. Julie's just hanging out there. What's up? All right. Julie tapped out, was like, not having it. Miggy, sorry, don't want to talk to you in the file today. So here we go. We have that toggle off. I'm going to go ahead. You see that when I select that main component here on my canvas, when I look up top, it says add variant. I can add that variant. So what we have here is another variant on that first instance. It's maintaining like all of the naming structures. If I want to name everything properly, I can come here, I can select the whole component set. I can come over here to the right where the properties are, and I can give them more defined values. So here I can call this, toggle state, and then this one could be off, and this one can be on. So we have an off on toggle state, or it could be true or false. So then that way, when we have an instance, you can actually see that it sort of represents it here. Once what we could do is kind of change the kind of like physical properties of that object over here. Let's make that green, let's turn this, let's make that like a nice little subtle, it's like it's on, right? Like, it's on like Donkey Kong. Yo, what up? What's good? All right, so yeah, so then here we have our toggle state, and you can see on and off. And what we could do is we can actually create an interaction to associate with this. So I can go to my prototype. Let's go to this first one here. I'm going to drag that. Now, if they're too close for comfort, and you want to open them up a bit more, I can select that whole component set. I can press Shift A, that puts it in an auto layout, and that allows me to kind of control the spacing there, kind of keeps them nice and organized. I'm going to go back into prototype mode. Let's select this first object, drag that down, and here it's going to say on click, right? But that's not actually what we want. We actually want to go to the object that we're going to drag, right? And we're going to go here and we're going to say on drag. And the way that the dragging works, it looks at the delta between the first one and the second one, and it says, which way are you dragging me? And that way we're going to then perform a change to, and with a change to, we're going to create a smart animate animation. And what that's going to do, it's going to animate those properties. It's going to look at the gray and say, hey, let's transform you to green. And it's going to look at the object on the left and says, let's move you to the right. And once again, we have like my ease in out function here. Once again, this is kind of like my favorite one. I could even make it bounce out a little bit, but let's just kind of keep it right about there. Usually what I do is about a 0.8, 0, 0.2, 1. That's my when in doubt, ease in out curve. And let's also then select this guy to drag back. And once again, we want to drag interaction. We're going to turn the toggle state off. We're going to smart animate it. And this is what that's going to look like. So we now have this little toggle that can go on and off, but we also have interaction that kind of takes place there. So we can draw a frame and we can have many of these. So I can have 1, 2, hit Command D, 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 right? So we can have all of these objects right there. I can select them all as well. Let's change their state, their toggle state off. Let's make that fill a little bit more visible. There we go. So we got frame 3, frame 3. Let's just say frame 3. That's how you know you named the layer properly. I'm going to select that frame. Let's head on over, play it in the prototype mode. I'm going to press Z to make sure it scales. So here you can see I can have on, you know, on, off. And once again, this is, if you've never made an interactive component, the examples that I'm showing are kind of like a good way to start to think about it. I know that here I can actually show you a fun one that I made in the interactive components playground file. I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to copy this here. So I'm going to grab that and this. I'm going to copy that. Let's bring it back here. So what's cool about this one, and what I kind of love about this like interaction, is that in prototype mode, you know, it's almost like a choose your own adventure, right? You know, when you hover over, it presents you to two options. When you tap on, you know, one of them, it then sends you in that direction, and then it can close out, to make kind of like a tic-tac-toe interaction. So this was actually one of the very first interactive components that I made while working at Figma, you know, before they were launched, before when it was still in beta, you know, and this is what really kind of sparked my imagination for, you know, what could be done. And the brilliance of it is that any one of these states can be copied over and pasted here. If I press the K key, you know, I could even scale it. And it's so cool to have this sort of nested interaction, kind of choose your own adventure thing. There's a lot of fun that could be had with that. Cool. So I'm gonna actually just drop this right there. Hi, Jessica. Man, people just be disappearing. Like I say what's up and then they just bounce. They're like, nope, not gonna cross cursors with you. Let's see, tick, tack, toe. There you go. So if you want to copy paste that example or play with it, try it out. I do realize that I was gonna show y'all something. The one thing that I really like playing around with interactive components, I like to hack interactive components in a way to create more complex animations. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Unless there are any questions. Are there any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Baffled always. Do you have a question? Oh my God, it's Charlie. Do you have a question? No? Y'all following along? Is all this old? Is all this news? No news to you? Do you know how to do these things? Are you comfortable doing these things? Making such things? Nope, nope, nope. Nando, your first time chat. Welcome, welcome. Nope, making a three-way toggle. Yeah, yeah. All right, awesome. This is so great. Cool. Oh man, I want to see baffled always three-way toggle. I think he's in his. They're in their own file. Okay, so um, cool. So what I'm actually going to show you really quick. I know I started talking about this. Um, Polygon, right? So this was something that like I had made with my students. So I draw a triangle. I'm going to Command E. That's going to flatten it out. I'm going to make this into a component. So a polygon, right? So I'm just going to call this triangle. I name things well. So here's an instance of that triangle. I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to hold down the Shift key as I rotate it, and I'm going to move this down. Now, what's really cool is that when I move this triangle, like those instances also move, right? So let's start that over. I'm going to show you one more time. So here I have a triangle. I have it black. I'm going to hit Command E. It's flattened out. I put it as a component. I'm going to name this triangle. Now I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to bring it down until it snaps. So you see I bring it down and it snaps. So now I have two of these. And once again, because this is the main component, when I move it, it's controlling that other one, and that other one is rotated. So it's kind of like inverted. So I can copy, paste, rotate, copy, paste, rotate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another component out of this. And you'll see that when I make a component out of this, you can't nest a main component inside of another one. So you'll see that this kind of now acts as a controller. And if I throw like a little stroke on there, let's make like a white stroke. Let's make it a little bit bigger. What we have, now what I'm doing is I command click to select the polygon inside of the triangle. And then as I begin to drag it, I hold down the the space bar. So when I hold the space bar and the Shift key, right, it allows me to move it within that component without it jumping out of the component. So if I just moved it, it'll jump out of the component and everything breaks. But I command click and I start to move it a little bit. I hold down the Shift key and then I hold the space bar. And that'll let me, continue to move this in either way, right? And I'm making like a little like shutter interaction here. So that's cool. Now I'm gonna call this aperture. Select them both. And over here, this is like the third way to make a component set. So I showed you how to make a component set from from a couple frames. I showed you how to make a component set by adding additional variants. This one's a little bit different. Let's say I have two main components. I'm going to select them and I'm going to combine them as variants. So now we have a new component set. And what I'm going to call this is my shutter interaction, right? So this is where I get to the part about hacking an animation. Now, if I was to create a shutter interaction that, let's say I'm making a camera app and I need to represent this. Let's say I have a frame here, right? And I actually have a community file with this too, so I can share that out. I also believe, I think I showed this on TikTok, but here I'm going to go into all of the little details. So I can copy an instance of that shutter interaction here. Let's say too, I want to mask this out. I can draw in a circle. So let's draw on an ellipse, right? So I have an ellipse, it's censored, everything's, censored. Let's make that green just so y'all can see that it's a mask. I'm going to call this a mask. Now, this mask actually needs to be behind the object. So I'm just going to hit the left bracket key. Left bracket key is going to send it back, right? So I'm sending it to the back. And over here, you can see in my layers panel, I have these two objects. Actually, my layers panel is up there. I have these two objects. So when I select this, I can say use as mask, right? And it's masking the shutter interaction that's above. Now, what's cool here is that this is a main component that then controls instances inside of this main component, and then it's reflected here on the frame. So when I move this left and right, I get this really cool kind of shutter interaction. Once again, this main component, I command click to select the polygon inside of it. I then begin to move it a little. I hold the shift key with the space bar, and that will make sure that I don't accidentally drag it outside of the frame bounds. By the way, here's a fun little trick. If you don't know where the bounds are of a frame, so let's say, I draw a frame and there's like, no background, right? You don't know what the bounds are. If I hit command / or control P or command P, I'm going to bring up the this little window right here, and I'm going to say show frame outlines. Show frame outlines is then going to show the frame outlines whenever you have a frame. So that's like a good thing to know. So if this was out here, you can see the frame outlines of that object. I know Shift O lets you go see it this way, but if you're like working and you have a bunch of objects that, if you don't see frame outlines, right, then they're gone. So Shift O is different where in its outline mode, whereas frame outlines just let you see the bounds of the frames that you might have on your canvas. So Shift command / show frame outlines, I toggle that on and I can see all of these frames actually have given bounds. So what we're going to do here is, you see we have our shutter interaction and we have our frame. Let's call this, 01. Great at naming I am. And I'm going to select this. I'm going to move this over here. I appreciate the little mind blown. I'm going to select both of those objects. So I have the component set and the frame. I'm going to option drag that down. So I have a duplicate. Now, when I duplicate this from that first set, this instance is now represented here. So just like this instance is represented here, when I make a change, right, I'm basically animating. When I go to smart animate, it's going to animate from this to this, right? So instead of having to move each of those triangles independently, I have a main component and I have all of its instances in another main component, and I have that constructed across two component sets that have the same name. So now when I go here and let's say my prototype, let's just create a click prototype. So I'm going to say on click, I'm going to navigate to that second frame, and here we're going to smart animate between them, right? And then same thing here, I'm going to just click to go back. You'll see that it animates between the two. So instead of having to manually adjust each of those triangles, I'm using the instance pattern as a means to animate between them. And essentially what I'm doing here is this first component set keeps track of all of the names, like the entire structure of all of the layers is maintained. And then this kind of gives me that ability to sort of hack it in a way that I see fit. So I can move this to the left. So now, once again, when I play it, you can see it open and close. So I could do further things, right? Because this, once again, is an instance of this here, what I can do is I can select them both. Thank you, Jabronis. And I can make that like a little bit bigger. I can scale that. Oops, let me try that again. I think because I'm in prototype mode, or what just happened? Here, let me fix that really quick. Easy fix. Come back here, select them, duplicate them. I'm going to move that over to the left. Let's go to prototype. Oops, go to prototype, drag that down. Voila, all of those settings are maintained, and drag that back up, and that should play just fine. And then also, because these are instances, I can do things like change the color of each one of these objects as they transition. Right? So I can make this a lot of fun. I can turn this then into like a sort of like logo animation of sorts. Here we go. Like, I got this fun little thing here. And now when I hit shift space bar, I can I can have that turn on and off. Let's move that a little bit more to the left. And yeah, this is just like one of my favorite little things to do. Sometimes I use this as like an exercise over and over again. Could I have the single component set with two of the variants singled out in the triangle, different positions, and smart animate between them? Could I have a single component set with two variants? So you can totally do that. I'm trying to think what you're saying. So I'm thinking it's about kind of like keeping some of this in the same kind of like respect. I'm not sure I fully understand single component set with two of the variants. What I'm doing here is I'm basically using this to maintain kind of like the layer order, the naming order, because this is an instance that is then in there, and this is an instance that is then in there. And I'm hijacking the fact that both of these are, like I'm using a frame interaction, and I'm using this. If this was not the same name, if this was called Shutter Interaction 2, that would not then work. So like if I go and I play that, right, you're actually going to see like a crossfade, so oops, let me go here. There we go. So if that wasn't named properly, right, if it has to be almost like an entire duplicate of its name. So then that way the name structures are honored and maintained between them. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, by all means, steal this. This is yours. Play around with it. Have fun, and I mean, there's all manner of things I could do. I could even like, I could rotate them. So, it's kind of like a fun, like experiment to kind of see how you can really just kind of push some of these things. And what's cool is that like if you are working with a developer, and you are creating something that's a bit more custom, it kind of gives you like a vantage point on how to articulate the creation of that animation. So one other fun thing that I would recommend doing with this. So I have an example. If you go to figma.com/@Miggy, I'm going to walk you through how to make this interaction just a little bit more unique. And this is something like I haven't really showed before. Let's see, this should play the prototype. Play the prototype. Maybe zoom out. Try that again. So now playing the prototype view. Anyways, I can open this in Figma. Let's just open this in Figma. All right, cool. Here we go. Let's copy those frames and bring it back to the homework hotline file. So this one behaves in an interesting way. And this was like a fun thing that I wanted to do. I have this rotating, like if you think about a dragging interaction, right, you got to consider like how might you kind of make this on an angle. Does anybody know the answer to that? I mean, you could probably just look at my prototype to kind of see that. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm kind of like tricking, the whole process. So if I was to look at this, I really just have like this big drag hit area. I have what is known as an invisible dragger. It's just a rectangle that is set to 0%. So this acts like a hitbox. So really, I'm just dragging that hitbox from the left to the right. So here we go. I have a hitbox that's literally just being dragged from the left to the right. I'll show you that one more time. So here, right, you could see this entire hit area is just kind of like above and below. So if you ever need to make more of a custom drag interaction, right, you see it kind of there. Now, somebody just said rotate instead of move, and you're absolutely correct. So another thing that's taking place within this interaction is I have a rotator, right? And this rotator is allowing me to sort of change that point of origin for this circle. And what I'm doing is I'm rotating it along those 2 points. So in here, what I've done is I've made a frame, right? And move the object outside of the bounds of that frame. So here we go. There's the the rotator, there's the bounds of the frame. You can see that clip content is turned off. And so then this way that object can be outside of the frame, and to help produce that animation. Then what we have here, I just have a humble path. And then I have another mask. And then what this mask is doing is kind of showing the progression of that highlight. So yeah, here, if I unmask this, right, you can see that here's the object, and I can come over here to this next frame. And once again, I can unmask that as well. So you can kind of see that. So basically this object as well is just rotating. So we have this kind of like what I'm going to call my color worm. My color worm is rotating, right? The circle is rotating with a different pivot point. And that's how it's coming to pass. So I'll show you just kind of briefly what that would look like. So if I was to, let's say I just have a circle, you know, I make it into a component. If I drag it and I hold the shift key, right, I can move it outside of the bounds of that object. And once again, this is where it comes handy to see the frame outlines. Command / show frame outlines, right? I could see the frame outlines of the ellipse, and basically I can see how it's being used to rotate there. So I can have an instance of this. So let's put it right there. Oops. Let's copy that. Let's have an instance of it. Let's place it above everything else. I don't want this to be masked, so I'm going to group these objects here. So this is our little, you know, mask group over here on the left. You can't see that because it's behind my head. I'll show you that right up there. I'll show you that one more time. So right now, when I brought that in, it's being masked out by the mask that I have here. If I don't want that mask to mask everything, then I just can group that selection. Command G, it's a group, and I call this mask. And anything that you do to this first frame, you also have to make sure that it's being accomplished in the second frame as well, because otherwise it won't animate properly. So, you know, I need to take a look at this first one. You know, here I have the mask group, or I can call this the shutter. And then over here in frame 2, I can do the same thing. I can group them, and I can call that the shutter. And we also then need a copy of this rotator, right? So here's the rotator. And now in this first frame, it might be off to the left. And in this second frame, it's going to be, you know, off to the right. So when I play this, you can see that it'll rotate that pivot point, because here it's off to the left and here it's off to the right. The smart animate is going to see that they're named correctly. Let's give this a proper name. I'm going to call this drag circle. And then you can see how that kind of plays there. And if instead you want to drag it, right, we're going to create, let's select that. Let's move it down just a little bit more. So there we go. We have it dragged out a little bit more. Once again, because these are both instances of that component, I can move that component over here. There we go. And we're going to drag that over. So kind of lost track what I was doing there. Oh, right. We just need like a little invisible box. So I'm going to create a rectangle. Let's give it 0 opacity. And let's make it into a component. And let's call this the dragger. And we can have our components kind of like, you know, nicely arranged over here. So there's my dragger. And I can copy and paste that here. So that like little invisible dragger can occupy the space. There we go. And then we can paste it over here. There we go. And now that is what's going to have the interaction. So when I go back into prototyping land, we don't want the little arrow. Let's delete that. You know, we don't want that one. Let's delete that. And now instead, we have this dragger on drag. It's going to navigate to, oops, there we go. On drag, it's going to navigate to the second frame. We're going to smart animate it. Boom. And this one do the same. On drag. And once again, that dragging interaction is just looking at the difference between the two. And so when I drag it, you can see that it opens and then it closes, and it opens and then it closes. And what's cool about this, when you're dragging it, you actually see all the little nuances of the states between them. You can see the kind of like the ease kind of come about. So this is a fun exercise. Like I said, like I like to test this out to see how that works. Cool. All right, all right. Any questions on some of the stuff that I've shown? Let me make sure I repin the URL once again. Let me copy a link, and let's share that. Let's see, paste and chat. There we go. Awesome. Um, Brilliant. So yeah, just a little bit of a recap. I know we showed a couple things with interactive components in the way that I start to really think about it. One cool thing about, ooh, we got stuff going on over here. What have we made? Who's this? We got the multi-circle. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, one circle, multi-circle. I like it. Keep playing. I love to see that kind of play take place. So, one thing for me that's like really cool about interactive components is that it allows you to have objects on the same frame, um, on their own timing, right? So if I was to, let's say I draw out, um, let's make like a little animation, right? So like, let's say, here I draw like a little frame, and like I have a circle, right? And basically, I'm just going to duplicate that where the circle goes up and it goes down. Here, I'm going to have a frame interaction. So after delay, it's going to go to this frame. So I'm going to have after delay of 1 millisecond, but we're going to change the timing of it. Let's say, 1000 milliseconds, so one whole second. And we're going to, once again, I'll show you, I can select that frame. I can copy the interaction up here on the top right. I can select just to the left of it. I can copy it and paste it here, and then have that go back, right? So I have after delay going in either direction. Let's just preview that, see what that looks like. Okay, so you just got like, just like a ball kind of moving up and down, right? So we have that interaction. I think it's way too big. Let me hit the scale key. Let's go back to design mode. Hit the scale key, press K. Let's zoom that down a little bit. That's just way too big. I kind of like lost my sense of scale. There we go. So let's hit play. There we go. So we have this ball going up and down. I can select that. Let's create a component set. And, we can call this, ball one. Now, what's cool is I can have a frame and I can copy, one of those instances in there. And let's have another version of this. So this is ball two. And in this prototype, let's select, both of those frames. And instead of 1000 milliseconds, let's have it be 500 milliseconds. So once again, I can copy an instance of that ball two. Oops. I can get an instance of that ball two. Oh, you know what? I should definitely do this in design mode. There we go. Copy, select my frame, paste. Copy, select my frame, paste. There we go. So this one has a timing that is less than this one. So when you see them playing next to each other, they have their own respective timing. So once again, I could have a third set here in this prototype. And I can go here, this delay, and this one could be even faster, 250 milliseconds. So back in design mode, I select that first instance and I hit paste. Oops, keep pasting it over here. I don't want to paste it over there. Want copy of view. You can also go to your assets panel, go to your local components and grab it. There's ball three. Let's just drag it right in there. And like I said, what's cool about this is the different timing of the objects and being able to kind of like see them in that space. Yo, what's up, CarMax HQ? How's it going? How's it going? Feel free to join us in the file. I've pinned the message. So if you want to join in, we've been going through a number of just different sort of inspirational examples and thinking about interactive components in kind of like a conceptual way. Let me know if you have any CarMax questions, right? Totally here to help answer those questions. But yeah, so basically, I mean, this was like one of the most intriguing things, for me, is just being able to have a single frame and have things, with their different sort of respective timings. The last thing that I do want to like kind of cover here, I'm actually going to show y'all something like a fun example that I made. I shared this recently when I went on the road with the campus roadshow. Let me see. Oh yeah, I have this. This is one of the really far out interactive component examples that I made. I had a spider walk cycle, um, that I kind of created using the same concept that I was using with the shutter example, wherein you have these like different individual points and they're basically being articulated. Once again, like its product use case there would be, you need like a loading animation or something. One last question. I saw something about Booleans. So I'm going to go over here to my local variables. I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call this Boolean and I'm going to call this, just switch. Right now, the switch is false. So the question was, I believe, something about matching, the Boolean state with like an object. I know I had a switch here. I have this toggle. So here I have this toggle. And if I bring the instance of this toggle here, what I can do is over here on the right, I can assign a variable and apply it to my switch variable. And what I need to do though, really quick before I do that, is just name these properly. So I'm going to change my toggle states to true and false. Right? So I have my toggle state set to true and false. Here in my variables, I have switch set to true and false. So when I drag this onto the stage, I can now assign this as a variable as switch. So if here, when I click on the canvas, I can set true or false. It's being applied there on the state. So if I was to have something else that's kind of also mirroring that, right? Let's say I have another component set and I say, the word true, and let's make that really big, true. So I have another component set. Boom, you're a component. Boom, there's two of them. You are now false. And these are named, the same thing, right? So this is going to be an example of what is known as two-way binding. So this is going to be true and this is going to be false, right? So I now have an instance of that here, and I can also bind that same variable. So this is a component set, this is a component set, and now when I play this, I hope this works, please work. True, false, true, false. So these are now two-way bound. So I'm setting the Boolean variable with this component, and this is also bound to the same variable. And so when I set it, this is now reacting to it live. Was that helpful? Was that helpful? Curender1. Man, pronouncing Twitch names is just impossible. Y'all be making really hard Twitch names to pronounce. Curender, CR Hender 1. CR Hender 1, yes. So this is how that works. Is that helpful? Oh, Chris. Hey, Chris. No worries. Yeah, so did you see what I just did with binding it? Awesome. Nailed it. Yeah, so I'll show you that once again. Local variables, the variables right here, when you create a component set, you just need to go over here to the right. You name the values as true, false. This one also has those values named true, false. And on the instance of the object is where switch gets applied. So if I was to click on the canvas once again, click on local variables, and I turn that off, and you can see how that's sort of represented there and how that's impacted. So if you have other objects that are like independent of that interactive component, you can then use it to kind of like trigger those. Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a win. So, once again, thank you all for joining today. This was a really fun homework hotline. We made a lot of things, we made a lot of nonsense, but hopefully some of y'all out there learned something. Cool. And once again, thanks for joining in. And yeah, next week is going to be a Fig Jam Friday. And in Fig Jam Friday, I'm gonna have a special guest star illustrator. We're gonna be in Fig Jam, and we're going to be drawing monsters and ghost stories from our respective cultures. So, like, you know, if you want to join in, we're going to open up the board. Everybody can draw. And so, yeah, Nara is going to be joining me, and she's going to be drawing like monsters from like Chinese and Thai mythologies. I'm going to be drawing monsters and creatures from Puerto Rican mythologies. So if y'all want to join in, you know, next week, Fig Jam Friday. I believe, is it going to be Fig Jam Friday? Yeah, it's actually going to be on Friday. So Friday at about 1 p.m. Going to be Twitch streaming. We're going to share out the file. Everybody can draw, and I'm going to be interviewing Nara, who's a brilliant illustrator, designer, and just kind of like hanging out and having a good time. Come for the vibes, you know, stay for the illustrations. And yeah, hopefully in the future, I'm going to start giving away some swag. So if y'all join in, you know, I'll have like little competitions and stuff if you want some swag. So thank you, Chris. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I don't know what the brain slug means, but the brain slug is kind of amazing. But yeah, appreciate y'all today for joining in. As such, you know, it's live and we're just kind of working on things. And sometimes, you know, you know, I was like maybe, you know, like 5 or 6 on these things. But yeah, I want y'all to have a great day, have a great weekend. Thanks once again for joining. And yeah, just be vibing. Let me know if you have any questions with Figma. Feel free to reach out. Let me see. Here's my reach out. So you can find me on Twitter at Miggy, on Instagram, Mr. Miggy, LinkedIn, in/Miguel Cardona, YouTube, Figma. You can see a lot of my videos. I got Professor Figma TikToks and the like. So if you do have questions, or if you have something you want me to cover, or if you want me to make a longer form video, please reach out. I'm here for you. Once again, appreciate y'all. Have a great one.